So I'm basically here for the final installment of Sourdough. We are just about done, around 40 pages of it, which I guess we could finish in 50 minutes or an hour at max. So let's get into it, right into it. Agrippa continued. I returned to the airfield the next day because the others had spoken the truth. Agrippa was a genius. Maybe also an asshole, but I believed he had something to teach me. I believed he understood the starter in a way I didn't or couldn't. The cheese is not the thing, he told me. The cheese is just the territory, the battleground, the bacteria are the thing. They are the actors on a milky stage. Most plants have at least one bacterial symbiote, he told me. He pronounced it carefully. Symbiote. He looked out across the airfield at the scrubby red and green plants, all those infected. But that's not the right word, he said. Infected means that there's something wrong. This is all right. It's partnership. Some plants are infected by bacteria that are themselves infected by a virus. Wheels within wheels. Clockwork. You have 4 pounds of bacteria in your body, he said. You don't feel it. He pounced on his heels. I think I'm starting to feel it. I think I can talk to them. Talk to them? He said. Send them messages, chemicals, hormones. What I want to do next is learn how to listen and hear their reply. He held on of one of the wheels of cheese under my nose and instructed me to deep breathe deeply. I did. The smell was dense and close, but there was also the suggestion of citrus, a far of orange. What would it be like, he asked, to smell our whole world at once, our whole history? If this wheel were us, what would it smell like? Agrippa thought it would smell like engine exhaust. He seemed barely to eat, and the things he didn't eat were strange. Extremely funky yogurt, strained and thickened, along with tiny wild radishes foraged in the far corners of the airfield. Once I asked him, Do you shower? He shrugged and said, The last time I showered was before I arrived here, almost a year ago. A year without a shower? The idea of it made my skin crawl, and he did have a rightness to him. But like the cheese he created, it wasn't unpleasant. Agrippa has achieved equilibrium. He had won the inhabitants of, of his underarms to his cause. One day, Agrippa said, I dream of a great council of fermentation, beer, sauerkraut, kimchi. Have you had kimchi? I love kimchi. My phone reception was terrible on the airfield. It was an uncanny spot, really, truly. In the center of everything, with San Francisco's skyline visible across the water, the great bustle of the port of Oakland across the channel, Oakland's own downtown rising in the other direction, the narrow fair beneath us, yet it felt utterly desolate and disconnected. It was amazing to see the ghosts grazing here in the calm eye of a storm of trade and transit. I came to visit again the next day, and the next. Mainly, I listened to Agrippa talk. When he didn't talk, I followed him around, enjoying the silence. I followed him into the bunker, tried to see what he saw in the developing wheels of cheese. Mostly, I failed. I tried to be helpful. He would show me how to do something, and I would do it. I milked a goat. I learned how he made his cheese. He painted it, literally. He painted bacteria and fungi over onto the wheel, dipped a brush into a scummy pool of some culture, dragged long wet strokes across the curd's pale surface in the cave. After weeks of development, these strokes took on texture and color, became deep blue or hot pink or flame orange, or even exhibited a ghostly bioluminescence. I had my first tiny breakthrough when I looked at one of his painted wheels and saw not a lump of milk byproduct inoculated with bacteria, but a map, color coded, just like an atlas. For a moment, I saw the battle lines. There were mighty armies on the march, billions strong or more, deploying biochemical material, fighting a war that was going to take, on the time scale, millennia or more, maybe millions of years, because it was for them evolutionary time scale. They could change. The microorganisms that won the war might not be the microorganisms that began it. For a moment I saw it, blue and pink and orange. I found Agrippa farther back in the bunker. I saw it, I told him, that's all. He looked at me, his face changed. Eyes narrowed and opened again. He nodded once. Good. Now you know what to do with your starter. Did I? I sat with the ceramic crock in the desk chair next to the airstream. It was night time, past 10. The sun was down, but the port of Oakland lit the airfield with a purgatorial glow. I wondered how the boats handled the strange light. They must have adapted. Agrippa and I were sipping experimental beers. I was a little bit drunk. I think my starter needs a warrior spirit, I said. It has a warrior spirit, he said. It was born with it. Then what's the problem? You need to give it something to fight. Like what? A rival, another culture, something from Big Sourdough. He paused. Is there a thing as Big Sourdough? I considered the question. The answer came to me. I can use King Arthur, I declared. That's plural, right? Yes, but 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 I was getting excited. They also sell a starter. They say it's 100 years old. They ship it to you. It's really popular. They must make it by the barrel. Oh, he said, perfect. Get some of that. Put them in the arena together. What if King Arthur wins? Hey, now, you gotta believe this. You gotta believe in your starter, he said. It can hear you. It's right there. You need to have a warrior spirit to lead the way. I stood up, stared down into the crop. The pale grey scum was no less pale, grey, or scummy than ever before. Are you ready to fight? I asked it. There you go, Agrippa said. Are you ready to fight? I cried. There you go. Are you ready to fight? I held the crop over my head and stomped my feet. A starburst of shadows spun around me, cast by the lights of the bridge and the port and the city and the brewery, all the lights of civilization. Agrippa got up too and started howling and dancing along. The boats stayed on the far side of the airfield wisely, but Hercules, the alpaca, wandered closer, curious. From view. What's next? Beyond the great rocky island, the world was shifting, and now the richest trade routes crossed over other seas. Fewer ships stopped at the jetty, fewer sailors brought beer and bread. But the Maz were still full of ambition. They had hardly begun the story. They used to they used their accumulated wealth to acquire ships of their own and armed themselves and became pirates. For a while, this was extremely successful. When Max pirates stormed a ship, they had always the advantage, always. For a while, the other crews were stick from moldy rations. The pirates were strong from rations made of mold. The great rocky islands was now a single enormous fortress pantry, teeming with the fluttering, wobbling culture that sustained the mass. They sang the songs louder, they sang them faster, they were hungry, they were unstoppable. They didn't realize the danger they were in. Something important had been lost. In case it's not obvious, it's easier to communicate this when you tell the story out loud, like my uncle does. The story wants you to think that maybe that something was humility. After a long season of piracy, one of the roving ships of the Mass returned to the Great Rocky Islands, only to find that the Great Rocky Island was gone. In its place there was a floating forest of fungus, with fluttering ribs and wobbling tendrils, many times larger than the Great Rocky Island had ever been. While they watched in horror, it fluttered and wobbled and burped. Lost was the kingdom of the Mass, eaten in the end by its own food. That last ship led to the land. The mass aboard carried their crops, the culture of the cave, and in their memories, their songs. Everything else was lost. It's just a story. There's another one about a girl named Maza who steals the culture from the queen of the dead. In the story, the songs are the memories of sad souls, and they are needed to trick the culture into believing it's still in the underworld. Sharia likes this one better. Me, I like the pirates. Me too. That's the end of chapter 27. We are here at chapter 28 now. The fall of Camelot. I like how all of this is just now, diverging into a big battle story between the Sardo starter and the King Arthur starter. That's gonna be. Um, I must admit I'm understanding it this time better because it was all just like a very unique and a different concept that I couldn't grasp even the idea the first time. Even now, when I searched a bit more about the author, I was able to grasp the concept better and understand what the author was trying to do here. So, the fall of Camelot. The King Arthur Flour Company began as a Boston-based importer in 1790 and introduced its own American-grown wheat flour in 1896. Since 2004, it's been 100% employee-owned, which is pretty cool. What are employee-owned companies? The company's headquarters, now located in Vermont, is an enormous 12-sided building called Camelot. From Camelot's website, I ordered the King Arthur sourdough starter, a single ounce, and paid extra for expedited shipping. The UPS driver delivered it to Cabrillo Street in a plain brown box. Inside, there was a very small plastic tub with a white screw on lid. I carried the King Arthur starter to Almeda, transferred it into a larger container, and began to feed it on the same schedule as the Clement Street starter. I grew eagerly, bubbling and expanding. Where the Clement Street starter smelled faintly of bananas, the King Arthur smelled strongly of flour, with maybe a touch of vinegar. I got the sense that's how sourdough starter was supposed to smell. Its surface was wet and gloppy. There was no suggestion of the slivery tautness that was the signature of the Clement Street starters. Occasional sentience. Sentience. I tried to see it through Agrippa's eyes. Imagine the King Arthur's starter, a civilization on the rise. Was it a bland was it bland, a bit boring? Maybe. But so was my own human civilization. I imagined myself as a cell down there among the teeming trillions. Maybe I was happy. Maybe I was excited for the future. Then I carried the King Arthur starter across my workstation to meet its neighbors. It was in it was time for an apocalypse. I portioned off a section of the Clement Street starter, not noting its despondence, and dropped it in a fresh tub, a great arena, then added the King Arthur and swirled them together. The mixture turned an even grey. For just a moment I wondered if I had made a miscalculation, and if the King Arthur, with its Protestant work ethic, might be the stronger substance. I whispered encouragements to the home team. "You're Alexander the Great! Rise in China! Everybody better get out of your way!" The starter spasmed in slow motion. The tub frothed with gas, emitted gouts of scent, new and strange, not only bananas and flour but also orange peel, Earl Grey gunpowder. Was I detecting signal flares launched above a vast battlefield, or was it wreckage of war, the broken remnants of armies cleaved apart? Was I smelling corpses? It took an hour. By the end of it, the scent of the flour was gone, and the Clemency starter was frothing victorious. I hadn't seen it so lively since the early days, before the marrow fair, before anything. I added this rampant culture to a tub with flour and water and salt, and I mixed the dough myself. I bucked and searched. It was uncanny. I formed a loaf and nothing stuck to my fingers, silvery and taut. This was sourdough on a wartime footing. The finished loaf emerged from the Fostofen perfectly, round and buoyant. Its face bore a new expression, an even distant look, hollow-eyed like a statue from antiquity. It was a face full of grim purpose. When I tapped it on its back, I heard an echoing boom from you. "Louis, I haven't heard from you in a while. How is your robot doing? How's the starter?" So now this is chapter 29, Tend Your Garden. That was chapter 28, the last one that we read. Tend Your Garden, chapter 29. The chemistry starter had changed, perhaps irrevocably. Before I sustained it with inert flour. Now it would accept only living fuel, and only in large quantities. Every morning was a new conquest. The starter was just the starter was jubilant, and I was back on track production wise. I had the volume of starter I needed, which meant I could mix the amount of dough I required, which meant I could bake enough bread to supply Chef Kate every day, and with luck meet the demand that was imminent. But as the mornings passed, I grew uneasy. The flowery scent of the King Arthur's starter was so innocent. When I scooped up the little utopia and dropped it into the arena with the Clemens Tree starter, I felt a twinge of something. More than a twinge. It was as if trillions of voices suddenly cried out in terror. Agrippa's logic had led me to this strange strategy and to the survival of Clement's starter, but Agrippa's logic also demanded that I see it this way, not as a simple kitchen operation, but as a clash of civilizations. It seemed silly to attach such grandiose label to something so small. But was it really small? There had to be a scale somewhere, the scale of stars, the scale of far of cosmic super beings upon which we ourselves, we humans with our cities and bridges and subterranean markets would look like the lactobacilli and the yeast. To them, I was the cosmic super being. And what did I wreak with my vast and impeccable powers? Total war, utter annihilation. I oscillated between finding this vision totally ridiculous and finding it deadly serious. The bread had never been better. The faces in the crust were so stoic and satisfied. Some of the scent of domination lingered in the finished loaf. Lily Belasco noticed the difference. It's a bit peaty, she said. How do you do that? What I thought was, well, every morning I sacrifice a teeming civilization to the Clement Street war machine. What I said was, who knows? Haha, Sourdough is complicated. Agrippa had solved my problem, and he had created a new one. I'd known the Clemency starter was normal, of course, but I honestly hadn't realized the depth of its strangeness until now. Because the King Arthur starter was very normal. It was happy and dopey, like a big brown dog. It had no special high maintenance desires. It just wanted to grow. I let it every day. The chemistry starter required a larger sacrifice. It was absurd. I was brewing the Arthur starter in garbage bins. Now, instead of adding the King Arthur to the Clement Street, I did the reverse. Only the tiniest trace of the culture of the mass was required. I tipped a cup over and deployed a dollop of hunter killer starter, potent and relentless. In just 15 minutes, it was swept through the whole bin, destroying, consuming, reproducing, venting plumes of banana and gunpowder. When it was finished, nothing of the flurry folk remained. As I was doing this, I was also reading the book Charlotte Kingston had selected from Horace's library and left for me, Candide, her cafe's namesake. It was unexpectedly a screwball action comedy. The helpless main character, whose name was Candide, traveled with a band of companions from Europe to the New World and back. Along the way, characters were flogged, shipwrecked, enslaved, and nearly executed several times. There were earthquakes and tsunamis and missing body parts. One of the Candide's companions, Pangloss, whose name I recognized from the $100 adjective he inspired, I'd never known the etymology, insisted throughout that all their misfortunes were for the best, and they delivered the companions into situations that seemed at first pretty good until those situations too went to shit. The story concluded on a small farm outside Istanbul where Candide plunked a hoe into the dirt and declared his intention to retreat from adventure and suffering and simply tended his garden. The way the author told it, the book was written in 1959. It was clear I was supposed to think Candide had finally discovered something important. I could see why the book appealed to Charlotte Kingston. It was a rejection of ambition, a blueprint for her small, perfect, human scale restaurant, a safe space set apart from the scrum of the world. Makes sense. Like a lot of people who get famous eventually retreat from the success and try living a quiet life. Some of them do that, then others, some of them are sacrificed by like sacrifice themselves for the fame. Um, yeah, it's weird how humans live. I like this book. I like how it has different feelings disguised and shown through different other things that are not related to those feelings at all. I like seeing animate objects through an emotional lens because I do that myself. Yeah, so this is a simple little book and I love it. That's why I'm sharing it with you guys. Okay, Now that the Clement Street starter was back on track, even if distressingly, distressingly, I had to content myself with my other limitations. The Vitruvian was working as fast as possible, but not fast enough. I needed another arm, but that wasn't in the budget, not yet. So I joined it. We stood side by side. I watched it work every so often, adjusting my motions to match its hyper efficiency. The student became the master. Other vendors in the days before the market's public launch had started to stay overnight. They unrolled sleeping bags in the lemon grove and slept there. I joined them. The depot sustained me. I wolfed on cricket cookies and tube fish tacos and lembas cakes, which had somehow gotten even worse, now both gritty and gluey. But they kept me going. I drank 10 coffees a day. When Nas wasn't around, I operated the espresso machine myself, and my drinks were quadruple shots. I was working more hours than I had ever at general dexterity, but here I was, aesthetic. I hardly worried about anything for days. I would enter states of perfect flow, eating, drinking, feeding, folding, baking, sleeping. While I slept, the Vitruvian still worked. Then one morning I overslept. Beneath the lemon trees, I must have looked mildly post post-apocalyptic as I sprinted up the concourse, hair wild, eyes dimmed, clothes stale with bits of cricket cookie on them. When I reached my workstation, I discovered the tub that contained the clemency starter tipped onto its side and a taut silvery tendril extending outward, reaching for the King Arthur where it waited in its garbage bin. The tendril flexed and flowed. The Vitruvian had retracted and was watching it warily. It wasn't programmed to handle this. The sight jolted me out of whatever dream I'd been lost in. This was not okay. It had to stop. I had to figure out what I was dealing with. I rose from my sleeping bag in the middle of the night. The depot was quiet, powdered down. The only light came from the grow rooms. I carried the Clement Street starter in front of me, now transferred back it into its ceramic crock, quarantined, and paddled in my socks towards Jana's laboratory. There I found hulking sequencer, the Illumina hypersensus, its plastic carapace gleaming in the darkness, a line of pinprick status slides rippling slightly. It seemed to be twiddling its thumbs. I fumbled around the lab, looking for one of the sample's plates. I opened one cabinet, found Limbus cakes assembling themselves, closed it, opened another there. Jenna had only needed a tiny bit of Horace's saliva. I dabbed my finger into the crock and let a dollop of starter ooze onto the plate. I pressed the button to open the machine, and its tray extended along with a wash of blue light from its glowing heart. I put the sample plate into the tray and pressed the button again. It was simple. There was only one button to press. This machine that could crack the code of life was easier to operate by far than the Fosterphone or even my microwaves. The machine reclaimed the tray and began to hum. I whispered an apology to the massacre to come for the massacre to come. Then I sat on the floor. Minutes passed, the hum gave way to the pulse of abrasion, then a high pitched whine, then silence. I would take the information I gleaned from this machine and enter it into an expedient internet search engine. There would be something, surely, about this organism, a warning, a remedy. I was waiting for the machine to chime, but there was no chime. I wandered through the sleeping depot, carrying the chemistry starter with me in a stock. I wandered through Horace's library, up and down the vehicle ramp, through a loop of corridors I'd never found before, which deposited me back to the near the door of the tiny pier. Then I followed the corridor toward the cricket farm. I could hear them chirping. This time I pressed ahead. They lived in row houses made from corrugated cardboard and superfine netting. I saw them milling around, climbing on top of one another, jumping and flickering, chittering and chirping. What were the epic sagas of the cricket kingdom? From back in the concourse, I heard a low and commanding chime. Okay, now we have chapter 30, Hunger, called Hunger. Later that morning, with the first light of the day peeking in through the skylight above the lemon grove, I was forming one set of loaves while the arm mixed a batch of dough when Jenna appeared fully suited in her lab coat again. I curled my face into the beginning of an apology, but she held up a hand preemptively. I'm not angry, she said. Well, I am. You should have just accepted my offer and let me help you. But it doesn't matter. I stood there with a cold lump of dough in my hands. Is that all then? Jenna's nostril flared. Not by a long shot. The slashes under her eyes seemed darker than usual. She tossed a printout onto the computer countertop. I have never seen anything like it. I recognized the spiky cascade from the screen attached to the sequencer. It was exactly what I'd seen in the middle of the night. Found inscrutable, emailed to myself, and after reviewing it in the morning, still found it inscrutable. This printout was wildly annotated in bright green ink, like little blobs and whirls, and above the graph, an exclamation, Jana's blocky handwriting, an exclamation in Jana's blocky handwriting. Listen to what I'm saying, she said. Sourdough starter is a community of organisms. You know that, right? Yes, of course. Every Bloom taught me that. Generally, there are two or three different species living together. That's what they say at the bread lab. There's a bread lab, Washington State. They do very good work. Maybe four species can live together in a stable community. But this is the sequencer's report on your starter. You saw this? I nodded, and Jana snorted lightly. I almost cried. She smoothed the smoothed the printout flat on the countertop and pulled a green-barreled pen from her lab coat. This here, she indicated the graph's broadest peak with the pen tip. This is the yeast, and this, she indicated, another peak, is Lactobacillus sanfrancensis. San, sanfrancensis. She pronounced it carefully. I did not. There, she danced the tip of the pen along a series of sharper spikes. These are matches for bacteria, the global microbiome survey. It adds up to a lot more than four, obviously. Then she traced a white box around the series of spikes that rippled along the graph's floor. And there are so many of them. These are novel, she raised both eyebrows. Apparently, that did not impress me as much as it should have. Meaning, she went on, there are no matches in the library. That by itself isn't so strange, like I told you. My cabinet is full of novel organisms. What's strange is finding this many taxa, known and unknown, living together in an apparently stable community. She paused, looked at me over my workstation, back at me. It is stable, isn't it? It felt like she was asking about me, not the starter. I've been baking with the starter for months. I got it from a baker who had it for years. Yes, it's stable. She tusked it was a tusk of all. There must be 100 constituents. The smallest spikes must be noise. It's hard to tell. But even so, this many, it's a scale and complexity of commensal behavior beyond anything I have ever seen or read about. Jenna Mitra looked like she wanted to shake me. This it is unreal. We sat with our espresso cups beneath the lemon trees, and I told her the starter story. Jenna Mitra did not make a good audience. Her gaze was hard and hungry, and she sprawled notes as I spoke, page after page of them in green ink. She made me nervous. I finished by explaining the starter's decline, my constitution, my consultation with Stephen Agrippa, its resurgence, and my concern that I had taken it too far, because I didn't understand what I was working with. But Jenna stared down at her notes. Everyone in my field is obsessed with identifying new organisms, she murmured. It's like a treasure hunt. But I already have the organisms I need. I just can't put them together. She looked up, staring into space. How do their communities work? I try, she sighed raggedly. When I move one piece, the others don't fit anymore. When I turn one knob, the other knobs eat it for dinner. My new batch is worse than ever. Do you know what makes it so sticky? It's not the enzymes. It's what the enzymes produce. Dead cells, lice bacteria, corpses. The glue taste of death. Great. The gluey taste of death. Great. Jana Mitra was showing me something real, and it ran a little ragged, and it made me like her a little more, like 2% more. She laid her hands flat on her notebook. I'd like to study your startup. I didn't think it was going to solve your problem, I said it as lightly as I could. Her face was a mask of control. It might. Please. We could work together. She was suddenly sweet and solicitous, and it was very strange. She should have stayed sharp and brusque. She could have commanded, "Let me work with that muck of yours." I would have complied in a moment. Yeah. Okay, I'm taking a short break.
Okay, so let's finish this bad boy. um, yeah, I actually was watching a series in between, which I'm going to definitely do a review for because it it was definitely not what I expected it to be. It just exceeded my expectations like so much. So yeah, we have the Slurry Factory. I don't even honestly remember which chapter it is now, so just bear with me. It was the day before the Marrow Fair's grand opening, and I was relaxing at my workstation, satisfied with my ability to produce enough sourdough, wasting time on the internet, and still thinking about Jenna's offer when something that could or should influence my decision. When she appeared again to announce she wanted to show me something that could or should influence my decision. It involved a car trip, and could I take the afternoon off? I accepted. I had the feeling suddenly that I'd been down in the darkness of the depot for too long. A year in California, and I'd rarely seen the south of Daly City, never stepped foot in San Jose, and barely contemplated the existence of the San Joaquin Valley. Driving down California route, State Route 99, in the passenger seat of Jenna's blue Tesla, was she able to afford a Tesla? The rightmost lane was taken up completely by semi-sprawling trailers, and beyond them, endless orchards, sil- silvery olive trees alternating with spiky almond trees, solid green to the horizon. The San Joaquin Valley's existence was confirmed. We watched a pickup truck with a portable toilet in its bed crawling along an access road, keeping pace with the pickers who were sweeping across the field in a loose line. There were structures that pooped out in places, immense featureless white warehouses like big box stores before any branding had been applied. We saw grain elevators, smelled feedlots. Jenna eased onto an exit ramp and turned onto a long straight road called Avenue 16. We passed a neon green tractor lumbering on the shoulder, and I waved to its driver, who waved back. Farther up, we watched a small plane fly in low arcs over a vast field of pistachio trees, leaving a trail of pink vapor. I fumbled with the Tesla's control panel and set the AC to recirculate. We turned off Avenue 16 onto Road 23. There were too many long, straight roads out here to bother with names. A semi was rattling up the road, coming in the opposite direction. The trailer it called was painted bright green, and as it passed, I saw a familiar logotype rendered in crisp rendered in crisp white. That semi was calling nutritive gel. This was slurry country. The facility was ahead. It was enormous, 1 mile square, a tangle of towering valves, with pipes and valves embroidering their surfaces, all of it bounded by loading docks where more bright green trailers were waiting. Train tracks ran straight through the facility. Slurry could be lowered in containers directly onto freight cars and hauled away in Chicago or New York, or the port of Auckland and points beyond. Olive trees lined the long driveway that led from Road 23 into the facility. Beneath the trees, fruit rotted in dark piles. This facility used to belong to Gallo, Jana said. They made like 10% of the country's wine here. A man was crossing the parking lot to meet us. He was tall and bald and frighteningly gaunt, waving energetically, his lips pressed flat in an enthusiastic smile. Dr. Chana, yes, and our guest of honor. This is Dr. Kalman. This is Dr. Clement, Jenna said. Her face was cheery, but her eyes betrayed a sense of duty. Founder and CEO of Slurry. I prefer Chief Nutrition Officer. He gave Jenna a feather light hug, then offered me his hand Taking it, I encountered a palm of extraordinary dryness. Come in, he said. See the sights? Dr. Mitra told me you're a slurry subscriber. Well, it all comes from here. I was a subscriber, I said. I hadn't had it in a while. He grinned and bowed. It's getting better all the time. Inside the air was dense and smelled slightly sour. Every surface, walls, and ceilings was braided with pipes, painted primary colors, some as skinny as my wrist, others fat enough to admit Jana's Tesla, all connecting in an array of enormous words marked with cryptic identifiers. It looked like a power plant or a refinery. In a way, it was both. Calmette spun around and continued to speak as he led us walking backward toward one of the wards. This was not his first tour. Farmers in Fresno talk about yield per acre. That's economic, not human. So, what if you're growing 4 tons of alfalfa per acre? Talk to me about people. How many people's lives are you supporting? How many healthy lives? That seemed like a reasonable question. Slurry is 100% vertically integrated here, so I can tell you this unit, he patted a mammoth wart affectionately, supports 2,000 people every week. 2,000. 2,000 students lived in my college dorm. I imagined all of them lined up in the front of the ward, bowls in hand, waiting to get their daily ration of dystopia. We put it we put in just $5,000 worth of raw ingredients. As Dr. Jana can tell you, it used to be a lot more. We are making it more efficient. You know what my goal is? Everybody says this is crazy, but I say it's physics. An average person uses about 3 kilowatt hours of energy every day just to live. You know the price of 3 kilowatt in California? 45 cents. That's our goal. It ought to be just like plugging yourself into the wall. That sounds pretty robotic, I said, and I say that as someone who likes robots. I just want everybody to be healthy, Clement said. His bulldozer enthusiasm flattered. I detected a note of weariness. We should faltered. I detected a note of weariness. We should be way past this already. I want people to have time to do things they want rather than work to make money, to buy food, or scrounge around the kitchen. He stopped and stippled his fingers theatrically. But I know people don't want to eat grave food. I do. That's why Dr. Jana's work is so important. That's why we want to acquire lembas. Ah, it came into focus. Klamath was leading us through the walks, towards the farthest corner of the facility. Those fields you drove through, that whole system, it's a dead end. It seemed like a rather large and vibrant dead end. Here, we can program a yeast to make anything gasoline, heroin, hummus. Not yet, but damn it, we are close. Dr. Jenner's work is the key. Right now, I can get one organism going, a yeast or a bacteria like E. coli, but we want more complex products. We need to assemble and train whole communities, like Limbas, like your starter. Mitra said, light. Listening to Dr. Klamit talk, hearing him slam the old system, seeing the resources he commanded, it struck me. Was I speaking to Mr. Marrow? The vat was the same shape as the one in Jana's lab, but 10 times as large, a monstrous egg of shining stainless steel. A neat sign on the front road community production desk, which sounded sort of nice. Help. Climate patted the wart affectionately. It's cute, right? We run our wacky experiments in these little ones. I want to give it to Dr. Jana, and this too. He stepped over to a plastic clad box the size of a mini fridge, another flawlessly anonymous piece of biotech gear. This is brand new, which is why it looks like shit. It can build microorganisms from scratch. We hollow out a yeast spurt in some new DNA, boot it up. I frowned. Just hollow out? Dr. Klamath gave the box a quick caress. Let his hand linger. It's a printer for life. Jenna Mitra's extended a finger to touch it too. The affection for this anonymous machine was palpable. These are impossible to get. I looked up and considered the what. It was bigger than my apartment. You can't just feed my starter flour and water, I said. Not if you want to make this much. It likes King Arthur. I paused. You can get it online. Or we could try feeding it slurry, Jenna said, and Dr. Clammett nodded gamely. Would the Clement Street starter eat slurry? Possibly. Would its parts be as pregnant as mine had been? Probably. Dr. Clammett squared himself to me. Here's the thing. Before I give Dr. Mitra the go ahead to get this revved up, we need some legal protection. No big deal, just something that says you give us the right to exploit this biological IP that you control, etc., etc. I got the contracts ready. I want to make it worth your while and give you a stake in the outcome of this project. If you have questions, that's why we're here. I hope you find this as exciting as we do. Jenna's face grew solemn. My deal with Marrow was that, oh, he is Marrow. Is he Marrow? That, oh, no, no, he's not Marrow. Was that he got 20% of Lembas. If this is as big as Dr. Clamet's thinks it can be, you could mean millions of dollars for the Marrow Fair. Hearing that sum, Dr. Clamet made a face as if he'd just eaten something bad. We are not playing for pocket change here. We are playing for the whole future of food. But was this deal exclusive? Dr. Clammus rolled his eyes. What? No, keep baking. It's great. I mean, I don't eat bread, but Mitra says it's great. Walking back towards the lobby, I considered the vastness of this facility. If Jenna's work was successful, if she used whatever talent was hidden in the Clement Street starter to stabilize and support Lembas to make it viable, it was possible that all these vats might be turned over to its production. This was scale. It was 2,000 people sustained by a single vote. For the Clement Street starter, it would be a conquest unimaginable. On the ride home, Jenna explained that if I agreed to license the Clement Street starter to her, I would receive 50,000 shares of 5% of Lemba's Labs, an LLC set to be acquired soon by Slurry Systems of Fresno, California. Those shares could be worth a lot of money, she said. There was my $19 million. I could split it with Burek. His reward for sharing the starter, and his restaurant could have very nice tables indeed. I thought about it all the way through Madeira, Patterson, Tracy, and Livermore, and when Jenna pulled her Tesla onto the airfield in Alameda, I had my answer. I'm sorry I can't. Her face crumpled. Were we not clear? You have something very, very important. I just don't feel like it's mine to give. In fact, it's the other way around. You don't understand because you haven't worked with it. And I heard a story about it, a warning. I paused. I'm going to get rid of it. Please, 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 don't do that. I cracked the passenger side door. I'm sure you'll find another way to make your stuff work. A better way. Let's keep talking about this, Jenna called as I stepped out of the car. This is what happens when you read at 12:49 p.m. a.m. See, she was reaching over her seatbelt, cutting into her shoulder, her expression pleading, "Keep that starter, keep it alive." The Island of the Mask. This is the next chapter now. I don't know which one. I feel like it's chapter 32, 33. That night I slept on my futon on Cabrillo Street, satisfied with my decision. There were paths ahead that didn't require the Clement Street starter. I still had the Vitruvian, and I had become possibly the world's leading expert on the use of robot automation in kitchen processes. In the morning, I was startled awake by a bad dream that melted away as soon as I tried to remember it. It was dark outside. Oh, this is a very long chapter. Oh, this is the last chapter. Yay. I decided I would go to the Marrow Fair and make my peace with the startup. It felt like it should be a private affair. I rode my bike to the pier and waited for Carl to arrive. The atmosphere was close and clammy. Heavy clouds hanging low, some days working in the Marrow Fair That's just my brother. And he just gave me a mini heart attack. Um, the atmosphere was close and clammy, heavy clouds hanging low. Some days working in the Marosphere, I missed the sky, but this would not be one of them. It would be cooler down in the depot. The omnibushi approached Pierre, shrugging merrily. A broad Carl smooth matched mine. Haven't seen you in a while, he said, his voice still sticky with sleep. People said you were spending the night. He poured us both some coffee and launched his boat again. We cleared the Bay Bridge and rounded Yerba Buena Island on the way to Alameda. Then we both saw it at the same time. Ahead, the silhouette of the island had changed. A hazy bulge loomed in the center of the airfield. There was a new structure there, vast, round, and somehow built overnight. Was this part of Mr. Marrow's grand opening? The omnibushi brought us closer. Though it was as large as one of the hangars, it wasn't a proper structure, but rather an organic form with a swollen gaseous look. It might have been a rising hot air balloon or a crashed dirigible, or as I considered it, an enormous planetoid. Carl muttered a curse, keeping one hand on the wheel. He dug in the compartment beneath his feet, produced a pair of binoculars, and tossed them into my lap. Through the binoculars, I could make out the texture of the structure and a sick feeling bloomed in my gut. The forgotten lemon I'd discovered in my explorations of Depot's dark corridors, I had picked it up only to discover that the bottom was fuzzed over with fungus, left velvety to touch. Out of sick curiosity, I'd held my breath and peeled the lemon skin away to discover that the fungus had padded the interior with airy filaments.